Welcome to GRC Uncensored, a new podcast designed to elevate real conversations with GRC professionals, auditors, regulators, and those building programs around it. Your hosts Troy Fine and Kendra Cooley, alongside producer Elliot Volkman, guide unfiltered discussions that dig into the reality of how governance, risk, and compliance function, rather than the rose-colored perspective that's fueled by millions in marketing spend. Now, onto your hosts.
Hello and welcome back to GRC Uncensored. I am your producer, Elliot Volkman, alongside our wonderful host, Kendra and TJ. Maybe he's feeling like TJ today. We'll find out. And we're going to be talking about the softer side of GRC. Maybe we'll readjust that title as I don't know. I guess we have some feistiness that's going to come in here, so we're going to see if we have some balanced opinion. But anyways, for that, we have a wonderful guest who is the CISO for a company called Anecdotes, which hopefully you're familiar with. We certainly are. And also the podcast host for a podcast called InfoSec Live. Did I get that right, Jake, or did I mess up the name?
InfoSec Live is the channel. The podcast called Risking It All.
So close. You know what? I'm not even going to edit that out. My failures are just notorious at this point. So with that, Kendra or TJ, are we going to kick off with the AI question, or are we going to go into the softer side or the positive side of GRC?
So, Jake, we start off every podcast now asking our guests, what's the last thing they asked ChatGPT or a similar tool? And I think I told you to ask this to the following person on your podcast when I was on it.
You did. Let's go and check. Let's go and see what the last thing I asked was.
It can be personal, work-related. Just make sure it's appropriate.
Ironically, the last thing I asked is my wife volunteers a lot of stuff at our local church and does a lot of things for various people. And she was asked to provide meals for a family where the husband has just broken his arm and shoulder and is incapacitated, so she could help. And then she came to me and said, they've got tons of food allergies. So the last thing I asked was, what could you buy in Marks and Spencer's, a British food shop, which is both peanut, gluten, milk, and egg-free?
Water.
And it gave me a bunch of food options for what she could buy at the store. Not very exciting, I'm sorry. I wish it was better and more InfoSec related, but there it is.
What was celery
items
on there? Because celery is good.
No, we gave a bunch of meals that were specifically free from in various capacities. She was able to buy them. This is what she actually bought them. Gluten-free and dairy-free beef lasagna with various sides, and then cinnamon buns and millionaire shortbreads for desserts. So, yeah, it worked out.
Well, that's a useful thing. That was useful.
Yeah, that's super useful. And probably very honest about what your last ChatGPT thing was. Do I have anything exciting in mind? Nope. Last thing I ChatGPT'd, Elliot called me on poor hardcore, so.
Must have been a LinkedIn post.
I've got to ask now. What did you ask?
He asked me a question about like the difference between like data resiliency and defense in depth. And I was just having a day where I was like, is this making sense? So I typed something up and I went into ChatGPT. I was like, does this make sense? And it was like, yes, but like, let's expand here. So it made it a little bit like, I don't know, fluffier, I guess. And I sent it to Elliot and he was like, did you just ChatGPT this? And I was like, yes, but here's what I originally said. It just expanded upon it. He called me out so hardcore. I was like,
it's so, my favorite thing right now actually is using chat to ask chat what to ask chat. So like, I've been using it for Replit and for Zap quite a lot to like create various integration into my Notion suite. Like I'm quite deep in trying to automate as much of my life as possible. But I found that while I have a coding background, Replit is unpredictable at the best of times. This idea that you can write in natural language and it creates applications is completely false. Like it still takes a lot of work. But I found that if you refine it and say, go into chat and say, I want to ask Replit to do this, what is the best way I can say this in a natural language prompt to enable it to make what I want it to make without me having to do all the after-school tweaking? It's really good at that.
My husband actually was just doing that too, asking ChatGPT to create prompts for itself, like the best ways to speak to it. So that's super funny.
Yeah, it's useful for that.
Who knows? Troy?
That's too meta for me. I can't figure that out. It's too meta. Trying to figure out. Yeah. Okay. Why doesn't it just answer does it answer the question then? Like if you're asking it like, what's the best way to do it? Can it just also then just answer that
Yeah,
question.
no, it'll give you the prompt and then say, do you want to ask me this prompt? But sometimes you go in between application, right? So you might want to go and put, I've got a Zap connector. So if I put it in ChatGPT, it can go into Replit. If you didn't, you'd have to go into Replit separately and copy and paste it. But yeah, if you've got it built, it says, do you want to use the Zap and push this across?
I don't have any cool. I don't use AI anymore. I'm against it, so I don't use it.
TJ's anti-AI because he thinks it's coming for his job.
I'm not sure it's coming for your job. I think it's going to transform auditing, but I think it's going to make auditors more important. Like, if you can automate all the crap, that's what we do anecdotes, right? You can automate all the crap.
Hold on, crap. What are you talking? My job's not crap.
boring
You just
stuff
said
like
no replace me and called my job crap.
Yeah, but I mean, there's stuff you don't want to do, like getting like evidence and like having to review it and like assess completeness and accuracy of the evidence. Like all that stuff's not interesting. The interesting bit, like finding the gaps that you identify and say, look, here's all the stuff that was in the control set that I noticed is really interesting. You can mature and improve, right? You become way more of a value add if you can get rid of all the time and money that you're wasting doing the stuff which we could automate. Like I think it makes auditors better, and it probably makes us as CISOs like auditors more. I think it's going to help.
Look at that. That's a beautiful transition, I think, into the topic today of just the positive side of GRC. Look at Jake just hitting us with this beautiful perspective on something that TJ otherwise is fighting tooth and nail.
No, it's good because I don't know how long it'll stay positive, this discussion, but let's try.
We'll try.
But no, I agree with your stance. I like how you put that. And I do actually think it can transform. I think we just see all the like auditors will be replaced in social media, and it just, takes a toll on you. I had to block a certain amount of people because I just couldn't take it anymore. So,
but it differentiates, right? The same with like Drata and Vanta were in theory going to replace all auditors, and it was just going to become one automated seamless flow from like start to finish, right? It didn't really happen, right? What it's done is discredited a whole bunch of auditors and made better auditors much more likable, much more engageable, much more respectable. So it's almost differentiated the market in segmented a way it hadn't happened before. I think the same will happen with AI. You'll get a bunch of people who will just replace their entire audit with this. It'll be a load of crap and no one will care about it. We'll all hate it. And it would take auditors who use it to say, well, actually, now I can save this much money in doing this kind of mundane work. I can focus on giving you real value add and guidance and advice and real risk consulting here, which I couldn't do before for the same price. Like, I think that's the one, right? It protects your price, but by giving you stuff which I actually care about. So I don't have to go to you and say, well, now you're using AI, I pay you 50% cheaper. I go, well, now you're using AI, 50% cheaper, and you say, well, no, because I'm going to turn around and actually give you 50% back in more interesting things which are useful to you that will help you mature and build. And I'll be like, that's cool, Troy. Let's do it.
That would be great. I don't know if the conversation will go like that, but
I've got faith. I'm an optimist.
nah, I get it. I'm actually more interested in, we can use AI. I actually don't really think it's that difficult for auditors to use AI to help them right now. I mean, I can just click buttons in Gemini and Google Drive and have it review evidence for me and tell me what to do right now very easily. I'm actually wondering how the audit process can be made easier with AI for my customers, if that makes sense, right? Like, so a lot of auditors are always talking like, we're going to use AI to like improve our testing as we don't have to hire as many auditors and blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't really care about that right now. Actually, I care more about how does it make the audit process easier for clients. No one's really talking about that, because if my clients, and Anecdotes does this, right? Like, it helps people gather evidence automatically. But if AI can, like, someone provides evidence and AI tells them, like, without me looking at it, like, hey, this isn't good enough for the auditor, you need to go back and get this, or analyzes it in real time and maybe gathers the evidence for them without me doing anything or looking at it, like, that to me would be more beneficial to my client than me using it internally to make me more efficient right now.
See, I think there's two pieces there. And I think I don't want to start product pitching because it's not really my style, but there's two things that we do, which I think are that. So, like, one that I think helps us is like we have this thing called Policy Guardian. You can edit this out later if it's me explaining.
Talk about it. It's fine.
But it's like one of the big problems I always found auditing is like you give someone a policy and you come and then say, right, here's all the things that you say you do. Show me, tell me, right? Or one of these that we build, which I think is really cool and I'm proud of, is like we cross map that to evidence sources. So if you put a policy and say like SolarWinds type world, all users under FA and SSO, complex passwords, blah, 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 right? And you're going to say, well, show me, tell me. or if you can now automatically map that to the evidence sources through the IDP, to Opt, or whatever it might be, Google Auth, and show actually here's evidence that 97% of users are using SSO without FA enabled in a sufficiently complex password. That makes my life a lot easier, right? I'm giving you a policy and I'm showing all the evidence behind it before you even asking for it. The second piece to your control stance, like we're already building and certainly have built, and I think that's the one for me which would make sense. Like a lot of times you go to an auditor and historically I used to go, right, I want no surprises. You look at everything, I want to hear that it's broken before you tell me at the end in a report so I can fix it on the fly in the meantime. And I think that's what we're trying to build and we're getting much, much better at, is that when evidence is uploaded, like you're saying, in auditors, we don't say like it's complete or it's accurate. We just say it's ready for audit. And in the ready to audit bit, it will now start to say, well, actually, ready for audit. Like, in theory, you pulled the data, but the data is nowhere near what you're going to be asked for. So there's like either go back and enhance the integration or play with the evidence lab to tweak what you need to pull, or go and pull a different feed, or forget altogether and post it manually because this just isn't working. Like, I think that's where we get to. And I think that's what you're talking about. That's what I want to see, is like that like reciprocally better. It's better for the auditor because it's easier to understand and put like governance to controls into technology. And it's better for me because like half the time I'm answering questions, I'm like, I can show you where all those controls are. I gave you the evidence stats. You're just not connecting the dots.
Yeah. I mean, as an auditor, though, then I always have to go back to the question is, how do I trust the data? So that's why I say, like, if I was building it, right, or I was in charge of how this AI was built and then our clients were using it, I wouldn't have to worry about trusting it because I built it, right? I think the problem
we say
is layer in between here where auditors have to make a leap of faith or somehow get comfort over the cleanness and accuracy of that data that platforms like Anecdotes are generating. And that's a very subjective conclusion that people come to, right? An analysis, right? That some are more conservative and some are very, I guess, more tolerant, I guess, or less risk averse when it comes to that as an auditor. So that's always what I think the $1 million question is like, what's the right balance of trust, but verify when it comes to leveraging these other tools for the audit when you didn't build the AI or whatever technology you're using to help with the audit.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think you go to like some of the SMB or kind of mid-market type tools. I think a lot of the approach of this green tick, red cross is fine for a lot of people. I think a lot of CISOs in those companies or whoever's owning that program actually don't understand if the data is complete or accurate themselves anyway. So it's kind of irrelevant giving them much more context. You're going to have to either trust the platform or question all the data. I think Anecdotes approach is like to present the data. So therefore you can see that data. And in theory, you can then query its completeness and accuracy. Say if you're looking at like cloud security configurations, well, just tell me to go to GCP or AWS and print out my entire VM stack. One Gemini search and you'll cross-reference and say, well, Jake says he's got all these VMs and he's provided evidence for all these. Is that complete? There's the kind of point that you get to. I think you have to have the data in front of you. I think once you obfuscate that and just put like a yes or a no, I think that becomes very hard and it's based on trust, and then trust becomes very difficult the first time someone says, well, that doesn't comply. And it's like, does the whole house of cards fall down? Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's a complicated thing. I agree. But at the same time, we've seen auditors try and build the platform and they all just keep coming back to us saying, we can't actually do it. We don't have the technology capabilities. So you're kind of caught in this catch-22.
I would never try to build a platform. Yes, I know where I stand. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think it's interesting that the ones that get more leads from the platforms end up being a lot more trusting.
Wow,
that correlates usually.
That's a commercial model right there.
It's like, do you trust it or are you subordinating your judgment because it's a revenue machine, right? So,
well, you also see in some of the, because I obviously advise companies who also use our competitive products like Banter and Dorado and people. And what also is interesting is that the auditors are inherently trusting of the platform, and then certain controls within it, but it seems like they're comfortable with certain controls, but not with other ones. And that's for additional evidence. I'm like, it's quite clearly there. But it seems like once you trust the platform, you just seem to ask really weird questions. Like, it's almost like you feel like you've got to ask secondary questions to make it seem like you're at least questioning deeper. But you pick and choose those questions that they then just appear odd to the person being audited.
What else is positive, Jake?
Look, we're miles ahead of where we were.
GRC world.
No, like we are miles ahead of where we were. Like, I think, like, I've literally, so this morning I was in a green screen. We're doing our AI summit next week, right? Or 2 weeks, whatever it is. I was in a green screen being fit. I've never done this before with like an auto cube frog doing like this weird like background and like prop whatever, right? And one of the questions I got asked was like, is GRC better? What's the future look like? I said, the future's already much better than it was. Like, I was there when we started this. Like, I was doing GRC and building up programs back when the best thing you had was a GUI that was effectively in front of some spreadsheets, right? Before any of like the Dradas, the Vantas, the Anecdotes, the Hyperproofs, the Secure Friends, right? Any of these things existed. And at that point, the best automation we got was a reminding notification I needed to re-upload the screenshot that I uploaded last year. Like, that's not automation. That's just pissing me off. That's just annoying. The reality is we are light years ahead. And while we might have like philosophical differences between how we and Drada and Vanta, or whoever it might be, see the world, like, we've all pushed the industry to a place that it wasn't comfortable being at. And in doing so, we've like focused people into thinking about things in a deeper, data-focused, AI-driven, add buzzwords here way. That means we're thinking about GRC more front and center. It's become more about like how I build my risk approach, how I build like my strategy, how I like justify my tooling and my spend, how I like explain and translate security to stakeholders. Whereas historically, it really was a team. I think we're actually moved in the right direction, like much better than we were.
Yeah. I agree in a lot of ways. I think that the tools like the Dradas and Vantas and Anecdotes have made the like barrier to entry much lower. So we're getting a lot more people in the space that are thinking about these sort of things. But at the same time, this is me being negative Nancy.
Go ahead, rock it.
Has that barrier of entry gotten so low that, again, I mean, this is something that we talk about all the time. It's just a check the box exercise, whereas there are certain folks that are utilizing these platforms to take their programs to the next level. But in other ways, it seems like it's lazyfied the ability for people to prove their security posture when it's not actually there.
So I'm being the optimist today. It's not using me. So I'm going to play devil's advocate on your pessimism. But yet, like, we've got customers. Like, we look at Snowflake. They're in our summit. They do amazing things with Anecdotes. It didn't need to be Anecdotes. It could be a different platform, right? They built integrations on top. They are like truly data driven. They have like dynamic risk. Like, everything is powered by data, and they're using it to completely change how they do compliance, right? At the other end of the spectrum, you've got companies who are now getting a SOC 2 like 180 days into their company's existence. They're ticking boxes. The stuff that they're producing is templated. It's complete BS. Like, it's complete nonsense, right? Don't disagree with you. But the reality is they didn't have a security certification before. They didn't do anything. So we as an industry, as buyers, have forced these companies to have to adopt some kind of security standard because we stupidly say in our TPRM service, we can't buy if it's not SOC 2 Type 2. Like, we just can't do it. So that's on us as CISOs, as a buying attitude that we've kind of created. And I think that when they align to a control framework, even if they're picking even if they're BSing their way through a SOC 2 Type 2, it's better than nothing. Right? They were doing nothing before these startups. So I think we devalued. I think we need to, and I've talked a lot about, we need to tier things like SOC and ISO to like bronze, silver, gold, and how complex and how mature your implementation is. So you can differentiate between like a Snowflake and between like a 180-day startup out of the East Coast. So I think that's important, but I still think that making the automation available to allow companies through click box and checkbox compliance to do something is better than doing nothing.
It's hard to not agree with that.
I think,
I will
okay.
say.
Yeah, I mean, it is better than nothing sometimes.
But they did nothing before, right? I inherited, when I first took my first CISO role, I took a role at what was called MemSQL, now called SingleStore, right? Database company. I got there, and I looked at the first set of policies, and I said, this is complete BS. And the CEO sat there, well, how do you know? And I was like, this is a template. It's not been adopted. He's like, how do you know? I'm like, because I'm the only British person on your payroll, and you're using the British spelling of words in your policies. So that's how I know this is complete BS.
That is
It was ISO,
hysterical.
wasn't it?
And that's the reality, right? That's where we were. Forget the policy being implemented. Forget some form of nonsense evidence of it. The worst possible, lowest degree of evidence supporting you. The policy didn't even make sense. And it wasn't even written in the right language. So like, I think that's where we've gone beyond that, right? Even the worst companies.
I don't know if we've gone. I don't know. I don't know. I still think there's a lot of compliance that is still that. But so I think it's better than nothing But is it better than hiring somebody or hiring a consultant that can actually run your security program or
No,
compliance
but
program?
look at the price competition. You can't make that make sense to me, right? Drada Avanta and other competitors in the space will sell at 10 to 15K. Go hire someone at 15K. Anyway, even if you outsource it to like the Philippines,
I
India,
agree
anywhere.
that it's cost prohibitive to do that. But money aside and cost aside, is it better than doing nothing? Or are you doing a fault, like in that situation where it's like, well, do we do this for 15K and just get through it as quick as possible and not actually care? Check boxes, don't even care about templates. Is that actually, that's better than nothing? That's creating like a false sense of security and like you're projecting to the world something that's not actually in place. Like to me, that might actually be worse than doing nothing. Like if you did nothing, we'd
At least
actually
that's
know that you were
honest.
doing nothing, right? And we would actually be more comfortable knowing that you're not doing nothing. I accept the risk. You're doing nothing, but I like your product. I'm going to use you anyways. Figure this out in 12 months to get a real compliance program in place.
I mean, I'm uncomfortable because like, you're basically saying what I think, but I'm now in the opposite position trying to defend it. So I think there's two parts to that. I think one is who's it for, right? Let's be bluntly honest. If you look at the really small companies who are doing this and the ones that are like fully commoditized in the space, they're not doing it to improve security. They're doing it to enable go-to-market, right? Is it better than nothing to enable go-to-market? Yes, 100%. They don't care about the security posture. That certificate is not about security. It's about go-to-market. The second piece of, is it better than doing it because of a false sense of anything? Well, I've never seen anyone connected to a Drada Avanta, Secure from Anecdotes, whatever it might be, right? And out of the box had sufficient controls compliant to be able to go and get an auditor in tomorrow, right? No one. So that means they've at least done something to get from the place they were to get something to get auditable, which is better than doing nothing because they would have done nothing if not, because they're doing this for a different reason to what we think they should do it for. But they are having to make some security configurations to at least get to that baseline to enable them to at least get an auditor in, no matter how high the auditing standard is.
Sure, I agree. I mean, it's taking the level from being completely at the floor to like maybe, just a couple of inches above.
It's moving
which
the floor.
Yeah, I mean, which is better than nothing. But like to kind of Troy's earlier, it's if that's the mindset and we're all just exchanging these SOC 2 reports amongst other companies who don't have people in the organizations who can evaluate that properly, then it's almost like you have a fake rubber hand and a fake rubber hand and you're like shaking hands with nonsense. You know what I mean? So
But this is where I came from a TPRM background. I was a CISO of Wistic. So like, this is where I think the problem here is not a GRC problem. It's a TPRM problem, which is like an under the umbrella, right? The whole existence of this crazy crap where SOC 2s have been, some people say democratized, I will tell you commoditized, like and broken, is not to do with GRC, it's to do with TPRM. It's to do with the fact that people are reaching that standard to enable them to sell because the buyer is not intelligent enough to ask good questions. They're asking terrible questions. Do you have a SOC 2? Do you have an ISO? Like, do you have a pen test? They're just terrible, terrible questions. In
And
fact,
that's
right
where
now I'm seeing my Slack channel light up with someone asking me questions in my sales team, and it literally says, have you done a pen test in the last 2 years? Like, yes or no. That's the question. The question is not like, can I see your pen test? The question is not, can you show evidence of remediation of those vulnerabilities? The question is not, can you see systemic failures across multiple pen tests that indicate that there's issues in your design or architecture process? The question is, do you have one? Right, and that's where it really roots from. The problem actually exists in how we buy software and how we evaluate it is fundamentally broken, like completely. And most buyers don't even know what an SBOM is, let alone how to ask for one.
Yeah, this is very true.
Go ahead.
I'm curious, Jake, if in your experience as of late, not to cut you out of this, Troy, but I don't feel like you probably deal with this as much.
Cut me out. I don't want to. I just want to listen and learn.
No, I mean I'm always interested
Cut me
in your
out
input,
completely.
but
I like it that way.
I don't know if you'll have as much on this. So I kind of want to focus on this from both the buyer perspective. So you're purchasing a tool for your organization and having a prospective customer evaluating anecdotes. Are you seeing when you have customers evaluating you more of a push for like the right to audit you directly versus just what seems to have been kind of traditional the last few years of saying, I've got my SOC 2 Type 2 or my ISO 27001. That's good enough. We're going to take that for what it is, and we won't push to audit you independently. So I guess let's start there. Are you seeing more of a push towards your customers trying to audit you directly?
So there's a German word which is Jein, which is a combination of Yar and Nein. So yes and no. And so yes, I'm seeing it in contracts, and I'm unable to fight it. I always kick back on it, and it's always like, Jay, do you want to die in this hill? And I'm like, not really, but just leave it in there. Right? And the reality is that we have a lot of fortune companies in our customer base, a lot of highly regulated financial, healthcare, like tech that's the back end for some crazy regulated spaces. Not one of them actually audits us. Like, they've all got the right to audit, but not one of them has come and said, I want to audit you. They come with their TPRM questions, or they come and ask me for a packet, or they come and ask for access to our trust center. No one has come with a formal audit process and either brought auditors to my door or brought their own people and asked to look for our entire instance for all our evidence. Like, that's not happened. So yes, they're asking for it, and yes, they're insisting on it, but no, they're not actually doing it. That's why I say it's all broken. It's a lawyer and like procurement process, not an actual security thing.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a lot of what I'm seeing as well, especially as, the company I'm working for right now is getting larger enterprise customers or highly regulated customers as well. But I have been a part of organizations in the past where customers have come knocking on the door for, their right to audit, and it can get messy really fast. Now, on the flip side of that, when you're evaluating vendors to be brought into Anecdotes, what is your perspective? Are you looking at vendors and saying, oh, SOC 2 Type 2, let's move on, or ISO 27001, that's good enough? Or do you dig deeper? Do you do that third-party risk management process? What is that looking like for you today?
No, so you might have seen, I did this on a LinkedIn post of the week. I don't ask for certificates. I don't really care if you've got them or not. I go into things I can find data on. So I go traditionally to pen test, and I say, I want to see the JIRA tickets or the Git PRs. I want to see that you remediate these vulnerabilities, the time frame you did it in, and how you did it. I want to see that there's no systemic ones. So I want a couple of reports, and I want to see that you're not always producing the same type of vulnerabilities. Are you always being like SQL vulnerable, or is it something else, right? That's number one. Number two is, when it comes to your audit reports, I don't want your cert, I want your audit report. I want to see what the auditor found, because A, I want to see that they actually found something. So if they found nothing, they're a terrible auditor. I don't really value what they said at all. And if they did find stuff, I want to see what's in it, and I want to see, again, evidence that you remediated it. And I'm going to ask again for data. I'm going to say, look, if you're going to say that you had a vulnerability that was in your SDLC, let me see what you changed in GitHub. Let me see the settings that changed. Like, I want to see stuff that actually happened. I don't want your word for it. I'm not trusting like a storytelling exercise. I want to then go deeper than that and say, well, I want to do human security. So I want to go and say, well, I want to see your phishing testing, your simulations. I want to see who's responding to them, explaining who's passing and why they're passing and failing. How are you training your people? What training are you giving them? I want to go always to like things that are evidence-based. I want to ask for your SBOM. If you're going to give it to me, I want to see, if you're not going to give me that, I want an export of your third-party code scanning to see that one you've got as open source components, and if they are current, up-to-date, and non-vulnerable, and if they aren't, then the justification explanation why they're not. Because sometimes I know it's a house of cards and you can't always keep them current, so I want an explanation that you actually understand competently why they're not that way. So for me, I'm always going to dig underneath and say, I want answers to see things that have changed and happened, and I want the data to support them. If you turn around and give me a SOC 2, I say, that's great, but I don't really care. Like, that's not what I'm asking you for.
All right. So with that, and I just had a really in-depth conversation with some of my sales leadership and solutions engineers and also my team. Because of the way that certain companies are starting to evaluate their vendors, do we think that SOC 2 is going to disappear? If you as a CISO don't care about that SOC 2 report, is it going to eventually just disappear because now we're going to do our own in-depth analysis?
Hurt my feelings. Come on, Jake. I'm waiting for it.
But I think they're all going away. So I think we've got to a point where we've got so much regulation. There's so much contradictory stuff inside of frameworks and certificates and regulation that it's very hard for most people to work out what the hell is wrong. Like I said, I think it all comes back to buying behaviors. So I think we'll get to a point where actually we agree on a common control framework, whether that's NIST-based or we just need to get to think global at this point. It's just getting ridiculous. And I think the evidence, like I'm going to this because we're an evidence-based platform, I think that evidence will become the currency of the future in terms of GRC. And I don't think people will say, if you've got a SOC 2 Type 2, they'll say, I'm going to ask about 50 controls. These are the 50 controls I care about from the framework of 300. Show me the evidence. I think that's where we're going to go. I think trust centers will be dynamic. At the moment, trust centers are a repo for policies and certs. I think trust centers will be dynamic. I think that I'm a full transparency guy, and a lot of people disagree with me. Like, I'd like to get to a point where I'm putting my risk register in my trust center and showing people what I care about and what I focus on, what I think about. Getting behind an NDA. But like with dynamic risk, when evidence is supporting and showing how I'm either reducing or focusing on that risk, and like I can to the point where there's complete openness and transparency. I think we're a way out, so I don't think SOC 2 is going away in the next 2 years. But I think that it's not unrealistic to say by 2030, we will have a far smaller suite of security frameworks, certificates, and standards. I'll be talking more about how data supports our posture than we will about the various cred that we have as a company.
That makes a lot of sense and really speaks to kind of the conversations that I've been having as well. It's like, it used to be a SOC 2 Type 2 was kind of your ticket to bypass that third-party questionnaire, which was wonderful because it saved you so much time. But now they want that on top of their own questionnaire that you have to fill out or providing that evidence. So my question back to like our solutions engineer was, do we even want to continue wasting our time with our SOC 2 Type 2? And in a lot of ways, I do still think that that is the golden ticket to at least get a conversation with certain organizations. But it's just, it's the barrier to entry for those conversations. And then you still have to prove on top of that what you're actually doing. And I hear you completely on transparency and wanting to make all of that visible to our customers. But it does make me feel like, sorry, Troy, am I just spinning my wheels and wasting my time on going through these third-party SOC 2 audits when I technically could spend very little money with some automation platforms, still get a SOC 2 Type 2 report that someone's just going to look at and say, okay, cool, set aside, now go do all this for me?
So I think they're detached. I think that's where we come to this whole point. I say it's a more broken TPRM problem than it is a GRC problem. Your SOC 2 is fundamentally required for sales. But it seems like your SOC 2 is not fundamentally required for buying. So for selling, you have to have it, but to buy, you don't. That sounds kind of weird, right? Because someone will say, is like question 1, do you have a SOC 2? Please attach. But then they ask and proceed with like 50 questions, which all relate back to controls that were within SOC 2. So they could have just asked for the first thing if you passed it, not asked for the 50 questions afterwards, right? So I think that there's a lot of fundamental disconnect in terms of like how and why people see security certifications as relevant or relevant. And I'm kind of with you. I don't think you can get rid of it because I think otherwise your salespeople will go crazy and you'll struggle to be able to sell in this market. But I think you have to get better at having data-driven, ready answers that can be fitted and moved and kind of transient into whatever questions you're going to be asked. Because broadly speaking, the questions are always the same. They're just worded different.
Sure. Yeah. And also you're going to get more real up-to-date information that way versus a SOC 2 that, I mean, could be 11 and a half months old. And then, who knows if the company has remained operationally effective.
And a lot of it could be a lie. Right. Like,
this is true.
Do you have DR plans and do you test them? Yes.
Yeah.
Can you show me evidence of the test of those DR plans happening? Here's like a Word doc that shows that we did the DR test. Here's the table plus information. For a lot of auditors, that will check the box. Not for all, but for a lot, that will check the box. You know what even happened? Like, forgetting if the document is relevant or real, how do you even happen? Whereas like, if I'm asking for DR, I don't really go that deep on DR, but if I'm asking, I'm going to say, right, when you next do a DR exercise, I want you to set up a Zoom room. I want you to crash the whole thing. I want you to restore it from scratch. You're going to record the whole thing in Gemini as like a play-by-play. So then for the future, we have like a written playbook of what we do step by step. You're going to show that you can meet the SLA that you have in your document by completing and restoring on that Zoom call before that timer runs down. And then I'm going to ask for that. That's evidence that it actually exists, right? And that's way deeper than like a SOC 2 or an ISO or any of them go. And that's right. And that's not hard for me to do internally and then to provide as the back end of an evidence repo under NDA. There's someone can then say like, did DR testing happen? I clicked yes. They click on that answer yes, and it brings up the video.
Why would that change if SOC 2 went away though? So what's the mechanism that's showing that DR test was done? Is it a trust center that says a green check mark? What's behind that? So it's kind of like we were saying, it's a TPRN problem. Like, is this a SOC 2 problem, or is this just what does assurance look like and what should it look like problem? Like, I'm not sure that problem goes away, which you just described, whether they're SOC 2 or not, or ISO or anything else.
I think it's an assurance problem. I think the problem that SOC, etc. have is a real branding issue. So I think they'll go away because they're now so discredited and so commoditized that people have such a lack of trust and faith in them that they're going to probably die. It might be replaced by something different, right? Who knows? But I think it's an assurance issue. I think even the word trust center I don't like, because it's like this inherent, like, we have it in our product. I still don't like the word trust center because it feels like it's a bit, like, you're trying to sell on the audio page. Like, I think we have to get to a point where there is an agreed set of controls that you pre-select as subset of for what you actually care about as a company, which would be different. The things I care about in my stack are probably different to what like an enterprise healthcare company cares about. And that you then request, or they provide evidence that's real time and queryable, AI or whatever, right? Allows you to actually see for yourself what that statement is. Now, whether that means that you're going direct to the source, whether that means that I've done that work and then you or Shelman or KPMG, whoever it might be, comes in and provides assurance that the evidence they check for completeness and accuracy, everything we provide can be trusted. I don't know how that looks like, but I think we get to a point where it's not a point in time. I think certifications have to die because they're all inherently based on point in time assurance. And I don't think we can trust point in time assurance in the future. So continuous assurance becomes the thing. Maybe you as an auditor are providing a continuous SOC 2 under a different name, where you provide assurance of the completeness and accuracy in the way I'm presenting my data. You query a subset from time to time as the internal audit type function to say yes, Anecdotes is providing accurate data and evidence. And therefore that is like my cert. But like that's far more meaningful to me than a picture frame that came up like once.
Now SOC 2 is a picture frame. Man, Jake, you're twisting it, man. That's all right. Well, here's a harder question for you to answer. Do the platforms want SOC 2 and ISO 27001 to go away?
Like you asked me my philosophical stance. Do we want it to go away? Of course not. Like it sells product.
Pretend you're not Anecdotes.
If it's Anecdote, then we want it. We want them to stay. But I guess the other question is then it's different for different people, right? Does Anecdotes want to stay? Yes, because we're helping you automate your GRC. We're not actually about audit passing, right? We're not focused on audits. We're focused on GRC before the audit. Some of the trust management platforms are focused specifically on audits. Now, do they want to go away? I think that's a different question than we salesperson ask. Some will say no, because if SOC 2 and ISO go away, I've got no reason to sell my product. Like, these small companies aren't going to buy it. They don't need it to automate a SOC 2. Some are going to say yes, because maybe that gets rid of the auditor, and maybe we're now selling end-to-end assurance, and I don't need the auditor anymore, and that's the part of my margin I just took back. So I don't know the answer to that question. We, as a company, we don't want to go away. An individual, I think it should.
Yeah. Well, I personally think there's some players out there in this ecosystem that, like, when talked to has this negative connotation, or low quality, or ISO, all of them. And the more they can pressure the audit firms to sell to do audits for free or nothing and cut corners, and the more they can devalue trust in those reports, I do think they believe that those go away. They put them, well, what's going to replace it? Oh, us, right? We're the continuous assurance that everybody's been looking for. That I've been hearing that a lot. Like, a lot of people have that theory, and I'm starting to think it's true just based on behavior and actions I'm seeing. Because I can't think of any. I mean, it seems to be pressuring audit firms to lower their prices so low, and finding audit firms and creating audit firms and doing all this to where it's like, who cares what the law or rules say, or what if this is ethical or not? We don't care, because it actually is to our benefit if this is actually makes SOC 2 and ISO look bad.
Yeah, we're now in like a tricky place where like I have lots of differing opinions. I want auditors to remain, but in a very different fashion. I think there are different views in that community. Like I did that podcast with the U Fandy, which was quite strong, where a lot of them talked about democratizing and not actually wanting to kill SOC 2, but actually I was the only person saying I thought it was commoditized. They were all saying it's a good thing.
You're talking about on IU's podcast.
Yeah, Drada, Vanta, Secure, Frame, they were all on there. So I think that's one side. The other side is that I do think that auditing was inherently a bit broken. I think while I don't think we should be racing to the bottom, and I think that premium auditors are differentiating, I think we had to disrupt what was becoming a bit of a broken model, where like I was seeing auditors over and over again, had no bloody clue what they were talking about. Like they were juniors, they weren't actually competent technically, they weren't competent in the governance, let alone technology. They were asking me questions about time sync protocol in 2024, like they were asking about encryption key revocation, which I've been delegating to GCP for as long as I can remember. Like they're asking questions about technology they didn't understand. They're asking fixed, like very binary, you need to provide this. If you can't provide this, you fail. I'm like, that's not how this works. I decide what I provide. This is my ISMS. So I think it needed disruption, but I don't think we want to get rid of auditing. And external assurance is always going to be needed. Like how that looks in this continuous one I'm talking about, I don't know. But I don't think I want to get to a place where there's no assurance, because that makes me inherently nervous that you can control your own posture. And in that world, like in a world backed by P and VC, do I trust that people will do what's ethically correct? Probably not.
Well, yeah.
Especially in a world where you can AI generate your own evidence.
That's a whole nother animal. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole separate debate that could be a whole another hour podcast on, right? Yeah, I mean, totally. And convincingly. I've seen some for like shits and giggles when they've done it, and like the stuff that they put up, like screenshots of AWS admin console with a naming schema of these showing encryption at rest configured as on, and it looking like damn close to the actual screenshot was like, yeah, pretty unnerving.
I thought we were supposed to be positive.
I'm still
You're
optimistic. Like I said, I still see everything going in the right direction. Sometimes well, listen, I had this conversation a while ago with, I mean, like everyone else right now, I get dragged on the stage to talk about AI all the bloody time. Like, how is it going to like kill the world, destroy everyone? Like your kind of approach of thinking, right? And I was
listen to every end of every podcast. Yes.
Like I live in the north of the UK. Like we saw multiple revolutions when you barely had a country, right? We saw the cotton revolution where they said that it would take the entire employment of the northwest of England. It would drive them into insane poverty and they'd all die. Like in a mechanized cotton mill, they found other things to do. Like the Industrial Revolution, they created factories in London. Like they said it would drive everyone into the poorhouses, to the streets, they'd all die. It didn't happen. Like they found new things to do. Like AI is the greatest shift in the history of civilization. Like bigger than any of those all combined. But the reality is it's not going to push everyone out of jobs, but on the way, it's going to be uncomfortable. And the same is true in GRC. Like we have to move from where we were to where we need to be. Is it going to put everyone out of jobs? If you include Troy, no. Because in the end, people are going to come back to trusting external advice. Is it going to be uncomfortable at times on that journey where people are going to be like, oh shit, that's not cool? Like, of course it's going to be. Like, that's the inherent nature of change and disruption. That's what we all advocate. That's what we've all talked about since Silicon Valley popped up. Right? That's where we're going to have to embrace and accept that it's uncomfortable. But I don't think that it's going to change everything in a painful, world-ending way. It'll get better in the end.
It's a very stoic way to look at this. I like it. You must read Ryan Holiday books. Do you know who he is? No. Okay.
No.
Okay. Never mind. Okay. Very stoic.
The most stoic guy I've read is, what's his name? The guy that swam around the UK. He talks about stoicism quite a lot. He literally swam around the entire of the island. Mad, without getting on the water once.
Wow.
I don't know who that is, but it was a very stoic answer, and I like it.
I hope with the advancements in AI, I'm around in 150 years so that when my great-great-grandchildren are reading about this revolution of AI in their textbooks that won't exist, we can look back and kind of laugh at ourselves and how freaked out we kind of were.
But again, look, like, right, optimistic or pessimistic, you can see everything with both lenses, right? You can look at how we are right now and how our kids are and how my 11 and 7-year-old are with although they're banned a lot from iPads and screens, are very controlled. You can see how some kids are raised and like look at it from a negative stance. You can also look and say, look at our lifetime. If you're in your 30s or 40s, like how much has changed since we were born? Like there was no mobiles, there was no internet, there was no portable devices, like there was no connectivity. We're now at the point where people are educated, like my kids can educate themselves through AI to improve their maths competencies and capabilities through a device that sits with them that I can control and review from the other side of the world where I'm working. And at the same time, set up a FaceTime call to talk to my daughter while I'm looking at my son's maths work. But like the world has changed in such a positive way, like through the embracing of technology. I think like GRC is another place where we're still really archaic. We've moved a long way in the last 5 years. I think it's great, but we're still pretty old school. Like we're going to shift to newer, better planes and come for the journey. You know what I mean? Like join the revolution. That's what I always say.
I think that was a beautiful summarization of this entire episode. To be honest, we were intending to be positive. I think we tried to bring it down, didn't we, Troy? We did our darndest.
Well, he didn't hear our
Jake's
Wolfgang
just-
Puck, and so he'll listen
Jake
to
just
that.
keeps bringing us back into positivity. But any closing thoughts, I guess, Jake, on the happenings of the GRC world, the positivity, the hopes, your dreams for the future?
I always think GRC is the most where it was, and I'm happy about where we're at. Problems or not, yes, there's problems, but the problems are better than the problems we had 5 years ago. Simply put, right? We are light as air. For me, I want to remember that there's an R in GRC. I think we focus heavily on G&C, on governance and compliance, and we forget about risk. Like my way that I look at this is I want everything to be driven by risk. I think your risk spreadsheet is dynamic and driven by data. Your risk should be present based on things that are actually happening in your company environment. It should be evidenceable. You should therefore make decisions upon FTEs and employees, like how you're deploying them, what they're physically doing with their time, the tools that you buy, the consultants and services you bring, all based on the risks that you have and how you can reduce or mitigate those risks. And then show again in live data how they are reduced and mitigated. I then think every control set, certifications up to or not, should be guided by what my organization sees in my context based on my risks. That's like future thinking GRC powered by data, like leveraging AI to mean that we're actually focused on things that matter to me as a business, and I'm presenting back to you as a consumer. Here's how Anecdotes sees risk. Here's the evidence to support the risk that I've got. Here's the evidence to support I'm doing what I can. Here's why I'm accepting the ones that I've got. Here's the whole crown jewels. Like, go and make sense of it. If you've got any questions, let me know. Like, that's how I think this ends up. And to get there, we're going to break some walls. I'm going to build some new ones. But I think we get to a place where we're properly driven by risk, which I don't think GRC has ever done. Outside the military, I think we've always forgotten risk, apart from having a static risk register full of nonsense.
Beautifully stated.
Risk registers are crap. I love it. That's the title of the episode. I'm going with it.
Thank you for listening to GRC Uncensored, the podcast, where Troy and Kendra know their shit, and our producer just talks shit. To learn more about GRC, go to grcuncensored.com, subscribe to our newsletter, or join our community on Reddit. Viewpoints expressed during the show do not reflect the brands, employers, or companies of our hosts, guests, or sponsors.